What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 228 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about a very different kind of book, Alice in Sunderland. This is another book that we talked about in my graphic novel class in 2009. This is not an autobiographical comic like the ones I've talked about for the last several days, but it is a very strange book. So basically, it is a look at the area of Sunderland in the UK and the history of this area and some of the important figures who lived in and near this area. It's sort of a textbook, I guess, except that it's not really. So basically, we have Brian Talbot, who is the author and artist of this book, and we get a fictional version of him who is kind of our guide through this book. And then he is telling us all this different kinds of stuff. He's not really going in a linear fashion. He's kind of jumping all over the place. He'll talk about Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland, and then he will jump into something else where he'll be talking about this dramatist who died in the 1900s or something like that. And he'll just be jumping all over the place. It's very much a non-linear story, but it's very fascinating. I did not like this book when I first tried reading it in 2009, but I kept it because I was thinking, well, it's a comic book, and I don't want to get rid of it because I've got all these comic books behind me. That was my mindset. And then a few years later, I tried reading it again, and I ended up liking it a lot more then. I took my time with it. I didn't try to rush myself reading it. In that graphic novel class, we had a week to read each graphic novel, and I wasn't sure if a week was long enough to read something like this, so I took my time reading it the second time through, and I enjoyed it a lot more when I gave myself time to really absorb everything that was going on. I wasn't having to just barrel through it like I did the first time. I liked it quite a bit. There is one thing about this book that is a little bit sketchy that I wasn't quite sure about even the second time, and that is at the beginning of the book, you've got Talbot. He is talking to a couple of different versions of himself. There are at least 3 different versions of himself in this book. There's one that is wearing a bunny mask. In fact, I think, yep, it's right there on the cover. That's him wearing the bunny mask. And then there's another version who has longer hair down to his shoulders, and then there's one who has shorter hair. So there's all these different versions of Brian Talbot, and they're all kind of interacting with each other and interacting with the audience throughout this book. And at the beginning of the book, Talbot says that he is going to give you the history of Sunderland and tell you everything about it, but he is going to tell you one false thing about Sunderland. And then when you get close to the end of the book, one of the other versions of Talbot says, hey, what was that false thing that you were going to tell them? And he says, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so he gets out this envelope that he allegedly put the false thing into. He opens it, and it's a blank sheet of paper. And he basically says, yeah, that was my intention when I first started this book, but I forgot what it is that I was going to tell you. And so you have this unreliable narrator aspect of this book that you wouldn't really expect with a book like this. When you have a work of fiction, the unreliable narrator is something that I feel like is more and more common these days. It's not like it's in every story that you're going to read, but it's not an unusual idea. It's not uncommon to find a story with an unreliable narrator. But when you have something like this, which is a work of history, you don't really expect to have the unreliable narrator in something like this. So when you get to the end of the book and Talbot is saying, I forgot which piece that I told you about was the fictional thing and everything else was real, you have to question everything that he said. And this is a very interesting book, and I would really like to know with some certainty, okay, this bit about the venerable bead, is that true? Is that false? Did he make all of that up? I would like to know. And so I really do wish that this book had either been, we are going to tell you a whole bunch of really interesting things that are all fictional, or we are going to tell you a whole bunch of really interesting things that are all true. I really wish that we could know with some certainty what here is actually fact and what here is something that Talbot just made up. Or maybe it's a legend that he didn't make up. Maybe it's something like Robin Hood or King Arthur that is legend that's been passed down for centuries and it's not true, but it's included in this book anyway. Something like that I can understand. I really do wish that Talbot had let us know up front, okay, this is what is real, this is what's not. And that's coming from someone, I like history depending on what way it's presented, and this book presents it in a very interesting way. I do think that the end of the book kind of devolves into this political rant, if you will, which is really weird since the first, 8/10 of the book isn't that at all. It's very much a almost an objective look at the area that he's talking about in the United Kingdom, and then suddenly it becomes him almost screaming at the audience. It's a little weird, but I still think that this book is very fascinating, very interesting. If you like history, if you know more about history than I do, then you might really like this book. Maybe you would be able to figure out, okay, that's not true, but that is. So anyway, I do recommend this book, and this is unlike some of the other books that I've talked about over the last 5 days or so. This is something that I could definitely see myself rereading this maybe once a year. It's that fascinating. It's that interesting. I really like this book quite a bit. I am very happy that we talked about this in my graphic novel class. It's one of those books that I would not have bought this on my own, but now that I have it, I'm really glad that I have it. So those are my thoughts on Alice in Sunderland. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.